Before we start, please make sure to go in the description and download the ePrism Effects Pack. You'll need this effects pack to truly master all of the effects that we're about to talk about. The internet is filled with millions and millions of crazy transitions. Some are simple, some are futuristic, while some are weird. But did you know that there are actually some really cool effects hidden in After Effects' chest that are just waiting to be used? So let's check some of those out and create some really cool transitions which not only stand out, but are actually surprisingly easy to make. Let's dive right in. This first transition can actually be created within 2 minutes with the help of a really simple effect called CC Lens. This effect basically adds a sort of fisheye lens effect to the footage, which is used to kind of help carry the transition and hide the cut as it's going over to the next clip. So let's get started. First, import the 2 clips into After Effects and bring them into the sequence in a way that the first clip is on top of the second, but the second clip is placed at the 2 seconds mark. This can change depending on where you want the transition to be in your video. I'm just literally mentioning the time for this tutorial. Next, go to the Effects and Preset menu and search for CC Lens Effect and add it to the first clip. Now open the Effects Controls menu for the CC Lens Effect and move the playhead about half a second before the second clip starts and set a keyframe for the CC Lens size and set the size to about 410. Then move the playhead right where the second clip starts and set the size to 0. This will make the first clip shrink down quickly into a sphere transitioning to the next clip. Now we could create a transition entirely out of this single effect, but it doesn't look that good. And to make it look a little more spicy and smooth, we'll combine it with one of our ePrism filters and a zoom blur effect. So let's import the slant linear prism and bring its main comp right under our first clip and place the original video of our first clip in the footage placeholder composition. The ePrism pack can be downloaded down in the description, by the way. Next, go to the first key point of the CC Lens effect, then set a keyframe opacity for both the prism composition and the first clip to 100% and 0 for the ePrism composition. Now move the playhead forward just a little so that it's between the size keyframes and the CC Lens effect. Next, set the opacity of the ePrism filter to 100 and 0 for the first clip. Then move the keyframe forward again until it's right at the beginning of the second clip and set the opacity of the ePrism layer back to 0 and 100 for the first clip. We're almost done now. Add a radial blur effect to the first clip and set the keyframe amount right where the keyframes for the CC Lens effect are, and then set the initial opacity to 0 and the final to 120, and you're done. Pretty simple, right? Next transition. This transition makes use of the glow effect in After Effects, along with a really cool preset, which makes for a really smooth transition that can be used in many different types of clips. This transition often comes in handy when you want to switch between 2 slow-moving shots, or shots which aren't flowing in the same direction, as it hides the cuts really well. Now generally, if you want to create this effect from scratch, you'll have to spend a lot of time in After Effects, but you can actually create this transition in just 5 minutes using our ePrism pack. For this specific transition, you'll need the ePrism slant linear preset and the magnify preset, both of which are available in the ePrism pack. So we'll import both of these projects into After Effects and create a new sequence. Next, we'll drag and drop the linear prism composition into the sequence and place our first clip in the footage placeholder. Now bring down the original clip and place it exactly below the composition layer. Next, we'll drag the second clip into the sequence and place it where we want the transition to happen. Now bring in the magnify composition and place it on top of the second clip, matching their beginnings. Now place the second clip in the footage placeholder for the magnify preset. Now we have completed the basic setup. Next, create a null layer and link all 4 clips to the null. Then move the playhead to somewhere right before the second clip starts and add a position and scale keyframe in the null. Then move the playhead about half a second after the start of the second clip, and then increase the scale and adjust the position to add a push-in animation. This motion helps a lot in hiding abrupt cuts. Now add an opacity keyframe to the linear prism layer right before the second clip starts and change the opacity to 0. Now move a second ahead in the timeline and change the opacity back to 100. This will ensure that the split effect is only visible when the transition is happening. We'll add another opacity keyframing to the magnify layer, setting the opacity to 0 at the beginning and back to 100 after a second. Now go to the second clip above the composition and set another opacity keyframe from 0 to 100. Only this time, we'll move the second keyframe a bit further. Okay, we're almost done. Let's add the final touch, and that's the glow effect. Create a new adjustment layer and add the glow effect to it. Then create 3 keyframes for glow threshold and glow radius. Set the first keyframe about a half second before the beginning of the second clip, and then another one when the clip begins, and then a last one after the clip begins. Just make sure to add that last keyframe about 1 to 2 seconds later. Now set the glow threshold to 0 for the second keyframe and increase the radius to around 50 to 60. Then set the threshold to about 10 for the first and last keyframes. And done. Now to our third transition. This is the easiest one to create. This transition makes use of the turbulent displacement effect to seamlessly hide the cuts between 2 pieces of footage. There are a lot of use cases for this specific effect. It's been used in films and videos where a character is dreaming and the character shifts from the subject to his dream. To create this effect, simply drag your clips into the timeline and place the first clip on top of the second one, where the second one needs to be placed about 2 seconds later. Again, this can be changed depending on the clip. Next, go to the Effects and Presets menu and search for the Turbulent Displacement effect and drag it onto the first clip. Now, similar to the previous transition, we'll place the keyframes for amount and size properties of the Turbulent Displacement effect a few seconds before the beginning of the second clip, and another set of keyframes a few seconds after. On the first keyframe, set the amount and size to 0, and on the second keyframe, set the size to about 150 and the amount to about 200. Now, copy this effect onto the second clip, but make sure to reverse the keyframes. Next, select the second clip and press T to open the opacity property. Then add a keyframe in the beginning of the clip and set the opacity to 0. Move a few keyframes forward and set it back to 100. Finally, add an adjustment layer and add the glow effect to it. Then add keyframes for the glow threshold and glow intensity a few seconds before the beginning of the second clip and set the glow threshold to 100 and intensity to 0. Move the playhead a few frames ahead now and set the threshold to around 50 and the intensity to 1. Then move the playhead forward once more till we cross the transition and set the threshold and intensity back to the initial value, and you're done. Which of these transitions did you like the best? Thanks for watching.